Let's talk money.
I don't have your money.
I know I'd be a lot happier with some extra cash.
Is this about money?
Obviously, this is all about money.
Oh, man, we got bills to pay, buddy.
With practical tips and a focus on Scripture, let's talk money. With Dave and Reb. From More Than Enough. Real conversations about money for real people. Let's talk money.
Are you ready to talk money, Reb?
I'm ready to talk money.
Well, that's really good, because if you weren't ready to talk money, it would be Dave talking about money.
I know.
And I'm not sure anyone wants to hear a
And you trimmed your beard, so I don't know if they know who this guy is. I don't know who this guy is.
Well, here it is. I'm the same guy. Just don't have the facial hair.
I know
Big surprise.
He's growing it back for me, though. Just FYI.
I told Rebecca on my birthday, I said, I got a great surprise for you on my birthday. And I shaved my face, and it was not.
I squealed. Yes. I was like, I like your facial hair. Yeah.
Well, it's coming back. So if you see a little scruff in the YouTube, then you know that, well, what's Dave forgot to shave today? No, I am growing it back. I just thought, it's summer, and during the summer, I just have a little.
Well, actually, it's September 1st now.
But now it's growing back.
Okay, right? Yes. You're ready
during
for the fall.
Summer, I was like, and to be honest, I'm going to be perfectly honest. You probably aren't, don't want me to be this honest, but what prompted it really was we had corn on the cob a number of times in a week. And, when you eat corn and cob, it's wonderful, but you get the butter. And when you have facial hair, the butter sticks. And I think I washed my face like 4 times. And that, I'm going to bed and I'm still smelling butter in my facial hair. And I was like,
thanks for sharing that detail. Too much information this morning.
So I went through August and the summer able to eat corn on the cob and not enjoy it.
There you go.
Later on.
Well,
later.
That's perfect. Yeah. Great. Yes. Okay. Now, if you want to listen to the show, which is other shows that have been on for almost 7 years. Mm-hmm. November is 7 years of podcasting with CHRI. You can go to notmine.ca, chri.ca, or morethanenough.ca. At morethanenough.ca, you'll also find blogs, resources, tips, links to the financial fitness seminar. You can just get information there, pass it along to friends that you have that might be in some economic turmoil and need some encouragement. There you go. So go there. And today our More Than Enough, our coaching business that we run, is sponsoring today's show. So thanks to More Than Enough Financial. Thank you, Dave, for sponsoring the show.
And don't forget to go to YouTube. Again, I know that, for sure we can go to the website and there's stuff there, but we have some resources on the YouTube channel. Let's Talk Money with Dave and Reb is where you search for the YouTube channel, and you'll find the financial fitness seminar kind of broken up. You'll find other podcasts. You'll find some other.
If you want to learn about my book that I wrote, that is now, it's almost been it'll be 2 years this Christmas that'll be out. So it's still a great resource and a daily guide for financial health and wellness.
Says the author.
Of course. That's what it's there for. I didn't write it just because I wanted to write a book. I wrote it for people to read and use as a practical help in their relationship with the Lord and trusting Him in their money stories. So, and this is a little bit of a teaser. Coming this fall or early in 2024, you'll be able to watch a video series that I have done with my publisher, Yaris Publishing. And it comes with a guide. You can do it yourself or with your church group or with your community. So just listen for that. We'll probably do a show about that when that comes out.
Yeah. So that's
good.
In the works.
I did not do that for myself either. It's a lot of work. So I did it for you guys. So anyway.
Thanks, Reb.
Okay.
I appreciate all the work that you've done for us.
Thanks. 2 Corinthians 4 says, it's a great passage. The whole passage, you should go read it. But I'm going to take just the nuggets of the last few things. Therefore, we don't lose heart, though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we're being renewed day by day. Now, hopefully, that's a renewing in Christ you're taking day by day. I put that, says Reb's little sidebar in there. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes on what is not seen So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. In other words, we're fixing our eyes on Christ. We're fixing our eyes on kingdom purposes and kingdom ways. And they're not something you can knock on. You can grab a hold with your hands. They're spiritual. It's mysterious. It's the Lord's love and kindness. They're these things that are ethereal in some ways. We grab on and fix our eyes on those things in these times when we're being challenged in our pocketbooks, quite frankly. We just read a crazy stat. Our daughter came to us. She's on Reddit. If any of that generation listens to this podcast, you know what Reddit is. She's like, Mom, the credit card debt in the U.S. hit $1 trillion the first time in history on August 8th or 9th it was. So I'm like, $1 trillion. So then Dave goes and shows our younger daughter what $1 trillion looks like.
And again, I could describe it in words, but your best bet is to go to YouTube and actually just look at the visual. Just punch in, what does $1 trillion look like? There's a number of visuals, but essentially it's about 3 football fields full of double stacked pallets. So if you can visualize a pallet, double stacked, so 8 feet high, filled with $100 bills for basically 3 football fields all side by side. That's about the picture of what $1 trillion looks like.
And that's the debt the U.S. is carrying on their credit cards.
What's more, I think what's important to note is that, there's a tipping point where, in a sense, and this speaks to the verses that we're talking about, in light of the natural, to pay back the $1 trillion for the U.S. economy, that's going to take a lot of work, a lot of intentional, with a lot of people to say, I want to get rid of my credit card debt and I'm going to do something about it. And because the snowball is now really working rolling against those people who have credit card. And so, bringing that right down to you and I and how can we respond to that? The message is the same message we've spoke over the last 15 years as we've been speaking and doing more than enough is that the burden of debt, the weight of debt now, just grows and it works against you unless you turn and work and say, I'm going to get rid of this. And it does speak to these verses that you read, Reb, to say, don't lose heart.
Oh, yeah.
You look at $1 trillion and you can go, well, what the heck? I'm just going to go shopping. Because the reality is there's no way that we're going to ever pay that back. I mean, and
it's interesting because the Washington Post article that I was reading about it, actually, I have it up here. They say that the Americans have actually been not too bad about paying off their credit card debt, historically. Right. So it hasn't been a worry. But now with some of the troubles with the interest rates going higher, and then they have resumed their student payment loan repayment plan now. So there's other debts that now have to come into play that households are paying. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect how they're paying, their ability to pay off their credit cards. It's just really interesting. It's never isolated. This is what is really interesting. It's never just your one credit card, your Visa. It's other things that are happening. And it's actually affecting what Dave and I have been reading a little bit about lately is financial resiliency. Canada has what's called a financial resiliency index, and they monitor based on 9 different things. We won't go into all those details. You can go look it up if you want. That Canadians, of course, we're not talking about America anymore. We're talking about Canada. Right. How is that affecting our resiliency? How are all of these things? And sometimes, when I was reading it, I'm like, oh man, our ability to pay down debt, because resiliency really means is our ability to withstand life events that can impact our income and assets. So sometimes life just happens. It's not just about us having a Visa bill with a high interest rate or amount on it, it's like, well, you lose your job, or someone gets sick, or I met a man recently who decided to be a waiter his whole life. He'd worked for CRA, and after a year and a half, hated it. He's been a waiter for like 40 years of his life, still works at that, and his wife got Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And
I would just comment though that in a lot of the clients that we serve and that we see it more than enough. When we talk about credit card debt, often people will gravitate towards you just buying stuff that you don't need.
Yes.
Right. And the reality is that most of the debt stress that we see, and I can't give you a statistic, and I hesitate to do that, but the majority of debt that we see comes from unexpected life events.
And then not having the prep done and beforehand to have the savings that helps cushion that. And sometimes you do, and you just you don't have enough because the trouble lasts longer. So this gentleman, I just wanted to finish that story. He ended up, his career as a waiter then suited their lifestyle because he'd have to help his wife, and he could work different shifts based on what her needs were. And he's still able to do that. And he had to make decisions around that because something happened to shift his life circumstances. And that's what, I think, do people need to be guilty about financial resiliency? Well, sometimes we spend money we shouldn't, but sometimes our life is happening to us and our ability to withstand those changes is limited. And it's just getting harder for Canadians right now to do that, for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah, and again, I think the practical aspect of this is just to say, what can I do? You've heard me say this. If you've listened to the podcast, you've probably heard me say this hundreds of times, but there are things that we can affect. And those are the things that in a sense are our responsibility to affect. So, if there's something that's going to interrupt your work, then again, how do I navigate that? And the quicker we can respond to those events, whatever that looks like. And this is why emergency cushion as a practical event gives us that time to respond. So I break a leg. It's not a really big deal. In my career, I sit at a desk all day long, right? So, okay, I might have to take a day off or 2 days off, or I might have some extra doctor's appointments. But to be honest, I can navigate that, and it probably won't even impact my my finances all that much. So that's an event that may interrupt, but doesn't really. Reb, you getting sick and me having to care for you because you can't care for, like your example, well, that may have a significant impact on the short term. Do I have to take care of you and I cannot work for a number of weeks? And what does that look like? Well, that's where our emergency cushion and preparing that now during the season when we're working is why we talk about it so much and why it's so important.
One of the things we're going to talk about in a minute is saving and the importance of saving and why save, even in a time when it's challenging right now, to make a plan to do some saving, to pay down debt, but also to build those emergency cushions for those inevitable surprises that life throws. But before we go there, I want to remind us in this conversation, when we are talking about financial resiliency, $1 trillion, all these numbers that, Dave and I are hesitate even to throw out there about where Canadians are at. You can Google it. We are not to lose heart, because and the conversation we're going to have, next week with our friend Ray Borg is a really encouraging one about just pressing into the Lord and finding out what he says is important. We go to the Lord to gain encouragement and strength in these seasons.
Well, I love what you read. So 2 Corinthians 4, verse 16, I don't know if you mentioned verse 16, but it says, therefore we don't lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. And Paul nails it on the head here. In our current culture, we can take these and you can read, in a sense, whenever there's a therefore, that there's some stuff previous to that Paul's been talking about. But the idea here is Paul's encouraging to say, don't lose heart, because guess what? This is the way of the world. It does waste away. Our bodies do get old, and we do, that is in a sense the natural. But be encouraged, because that is not the supernatural. What goes on in our heart and what is happening in our heart is, as time goes by, as we draw closer to the Father and as we draw closer to Him in how we think and how we act, that what happens on the inside, we gain more peace, we gain more grace, we gain more kindness, we have a more generous spirit. These things happen because we are drawing closer to the Lord, even though on the outside, we may be wasting away.
Well, and it then says, so set your eyes on what is not seen, not on the material, but set your eyes on, fix your eyes on Jesus. I always think about Hebrews 12 when it says that. But I do want to say,
I want to read this though, because verse 17 in this version is just cool. So, in verse 17 of 2 Corinthians 4, it says, our temporary minor problems are producing an eternal stockpile of glory for us that is beyond all comparison. We don't focus on the things that can be seen, but on the things that can't be seen. The things that can be seen don't last, but the things that can't be seen are eternal. It's just a different way of saying it, but I just love that eternal stockpile. And how hard is it? Like, it is incredibly hard to turn our eyes to the unseen things, to stockpile kindness, to stockpile generosity, to stockpile love, to stockpile grace. I mean, you go, oh, my body's wasting away. I'm in debt. My credit card bill's going up. But I feel like I've got this stockpile of grace that I enjoy. And so, the two aren't compatible, and we can't neglect the burden and the weight and the distress that sometimes that carries. But also we can live in the place to say, I know that that's passing away. And in a sense, I do want to focus my attention on the things that are eternal. I think that's what. Paul
and really I'm laughing. I'm kind of laughing because some of the ideas in the practical that we were thinking about this show in context of these verses and our resiliency, and you can go listen to another podcast I'm going to have in the show notes. We had a friend, Rebecca Southerns from Sage Solutions, who talked about adaptability and resiliency in this season of COVID, but it applies now. So I'm going to put that in the show notes so you can get some encouragement there. But I was thinking, man, we didn't talk at all about practical, like how to get ready for school, how to, we're always telling families, September's coming, decide what your kids are going to be involved in, set aside money all year long for this. And then I said, Dave, we missed that topic for the radio show this year. And he goes, yeah, but Christmas is coming. Black Friday is coming.
So that's the title of the show. Christmas is coming.
Well, I actually like the eternal stockpile. I think we're going to use that instead. But what are we stockpiling? We do have to plan and put some money aside. If Christmas gifts are important to express the love of God to others in your life, then how much? How do you do that? It just takes planning and setting aside that money, putting it in a spending plan. And one of the things we were talking about, how to, to live in these days, to encourage you. We've said it before. We've probably said it all year. So we're saying it here again, knowing that some of these events are coming. Maybe you have a wedding. Maybe there's a baby coming in your life. Maybe you've got some showers and you've got parties, some significant birthday milestones for people. There's money that goes into all of those things. It takes planning and setting aside. Plan, know what you're going to be running up against in the next few months, because you know Christmas is coming. This is not a surprise. It's not an emergency. How are you preparing for that? Make some decisions. You maybe not be able to spend what you have in other years because your mortgage is higher. Maybe gas is higher for you. Make a plan and have a discussion as a family and say, you know what? We just can't do that this year. Maybe you're going to pick names with you and your kids. Instead of buying everybody a gift, you pick names instead. Maybe you decide to donate all your money and just have our kids are talking to us about, what if we all bring a game we love and also bring a dish of food we want to cook together, and we spend a day celebrating at Christmas instead of spending money on presents that maybe aren't significant for some of them anymore. I'm like, well, that's a great idea. So there's so many ideas. You can celebrate without having to spend the cash. You just have to make a plan, stick to it, and talk about it.
Yeah,
really simple.
And again, I think there's that tension between, and again, this is the running in of what goes on in the inside, in our inside, and what goes on in the outside. And I think, Paul, again, is just encouraging us to recognize that, I like what your example you said, is when we're spending time as a family together and we're planning to just be together, that to me speaks of what's going on in the inside. We're actually feeding the love and we're building that up together as a family. And it doesn't have to cost outside money.
No, it doesn't. Because, you're going to spend money on some dishes to eat at Christmas. So why not just do something unique and do it together and cook together? That's just maybe a silly example for all of you who are listening. But it's the idea of generating ideas so that you aren't stuck in the stress of spending money that you may not have. And one of the words that came to me in preparing for this show today was the words slow down. So in my spiritual practices, the things that I do with Jesus, there are seasons that I just feel like I'm frantically going around, like maybe a little bit like Martha was, just cooking and nobody appreciates it. And you're
picking on Martha again.
Yeah, picking on Martha. But you're stressed and all of those things. And the Lord just says, slow down. And sometimes I get in my car and I drive the speed limit to practice slowing down. Sometimes I go on the longest line at the grocery store, and I tell people this and they're like, why would you do that? I said, because I need to slow down my body to align with the Spirit of God, because His pace is different than mine. Sometimes you have to go fast, but in terms of money and spending, and with Black Friday coming, you can be slowing. You can go to Black Friday and do the deals because it got good deals, but slow down and actually ask yourself, do I need this? Who is this for? What am I planning to spend? And and as you slow down the pace, you'll think, oh, well, maybe I actually don't need it. And I think sometimes if we slow down our decision-making process, because this came out in one of our seminars with some couples recently, that slowing down is really helpful, because sometimes we rush in, we say, oh, God's saying this to me, but we literally haven't just stopped and taken that deep breath and said, is this really important? Do I actually have the money? What is this going to cost me in interest if I put it on my credit card? Like, slowing down is a super great, valuable, practical tool, spiritually and financially.
For sure, right? And what we do know about the culture we're in, that it takes intentional.
Yes.
Like, it takes an intentional part of you to say, I am going to slow down, because everything, in a sense, from a marketing, walking in the grocery store, whatever it is, like, all of that is really designed to get you to make that spontaneous decision, because, from a marketing standpoint, they know that if you don't make it within right now, if you don't make that decision right now to buy, you're not likely to buy. You're not going to come back to the store. And so they know that. That's human nature.
Right.
And there's but for us to use that and say, well, I'm actually going to slow down, and that gives me time to process whether I make that decision.
Well, and it ties into the verses we talked about. You slow down to see the eternal.
Yeah.
Because in the immediate, when we're rushing into things, we're actually not thinking about the eternal things. We're not thinking of whether Jesus is walking with us. Like, we're just got to get the job done. And we got to buy that.
Nachos.
I just want, or like for me, like, oh man, I've worked all week. I'm so tired. Let's just order in, instead of slowing down and saying, well, what's actually in my cupboard? And we can cook it together. Like, it's just, slowing down is so practical. And that slowing down helps us prepare for what's coming, like Christmas, or, a hockey tournament that's coming in January. You're going to be gone for 3 or 4 days with your kid. It's expensive. How are you preparing for that? Slow down and think about it. Slow down and talk about it. Slow down and make a plan. Prepare.
And some of those are tough decisions around, do I, what do I commit to that I know is going to cost me money down the road? And again, this speaks to what we're talking about. Yeah. Sometimes it's you got to decide right now. And we just don't have or take the time to really process, okay, I want to put my kids in hockey, so I use that as the example. And there's a registration fee, whatever it is. Okay, great. Oh, yeah, but now they've grown, so all their hockey gear that was last year doesn't fit them this year. Oh, didn't think of that expense. Oh, wait a minute, there's 3 tournaments that last year we had 1, or the year before we didn't have any because, COVID got in the middle. So then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what is a decision? Do I put my kids in hockey made quickly without considering all of these other things that are coming up? And I use that as an example, but that happens quite often, that we make a decision. We say, I can afford this initial, but I didn't think through all of the others. And we only have a couple minutes. So just to reiterate, slow down.
Slow down.
Give yourself the grace to go, I need to slow down and maybe talk this through, think this through, and talk to other people that are involved in that to say, well, what is the true cost here? I really want to know what the true cost is, because that's going to have an impact going forward.
And that's part of planning and preparing, slowing down. So, Lord, thank you so much that you call us to slow down and to make a plan and prepare and to tune ourselves into what is not seen, and that is you and your kingdom purpose. Lord, will you give us ears to hear you as we slow down, and eyes to see what you're doing, and then really rest in the fact that you'll help us in the months ahead as things come up in our lives that you have wisdom for us for. And we just thank you for that today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Reb.
Thanks for sponsoring the show, More Than Enough.
My pleasure. And thank you for listening. And join us next week when we talk money.
Let's Talk Money is a division of More Than Enough Financial Fitness, where God is transforming hearts and bringing hope for today and freedom for tomorrow. For more information or to comment on today's show, please visit morethanenough.ca.